Quick content warning. Today's episode contains descriptions of historical torture, executions, and violence, especially against women. We also discuss religious persecution and supernatural associations that may be distressing to some listeners. Please take care while listening.
For centuries, whispers of witchcraft echoed through Scotland, spreading fear and suspicion like wildfire.
A simple accusation could mean torture, confession, and a brutal execution, whether the accused was guilty or not.
The Scottish witch trials, fueled by fear, suspicion, and power, led to the deaths of thousands. But were they truly witches or victims of mass hysteria?
Welcome to the Story Seekers, where we dive deep into myths, legends, and history.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Shanae. Grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's uncover the dark history of the Scottish witch trials.
Shall we get straight into it and pick a card?
We shall. For those of you that don't know, at the beginning of each episode, we pull a tarot card and see what this episode means. I'll pull one?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Let's go with this one. This is 5 of Wands.
That sounds familiar.
I feel like we've gotten this one before as well.
Okay. In tarot, the 5 of Wands generally signifies conflict, disagreements, competition, tension, and arguments.
Do you have something you want to tell me?
I was going to say to do with the theme.
Oh,
so
right.
Like conflict, disagreements, competition, tension, which I guess we're going to dive into, but there's going to be a lot of tension between the accused and the people who were doing the accusing. And I can imagine after my very brief history of what I know, this was a moment in history when it was a very tense time to live.
Yes. And also, this is probably our darkest episode we've had yet. So really going into quite a bit of a dark history here. Where there were really so many injustices towards people, but women in particular.
Mm-hmm. And other than that, shall I get started on the story?
Tell us a story about a witch.
Okay. They once called her a healer. Now she sat in the dark, her wrists crusted with the blood from where the shackles had buried themselves into her skin. The stone walls around her sweated from the cold, and the smell of the mysterious puddles from around her made her gag. A faraway place from the Highland cottage she had been dragged from. Now they called her something else. Sith, cunning woman, crone, sorceress, witch. She had watched them upturn her humble life, rifle through her books, burn her clothes and destroy her satchel of herbs. She had only screamed once, when they twisted her arm out of its socket, but never since. She let her head hang limply and closed her eyes. The scuffling and chanting of prayers from above had settled down now and silenced, and now she was left with nothing but her own thoughts. She could still feel the pulse of the young boy fading beneath her fingertips. She could still hear the mother's weeping, and she could see the uncanny, feverish colour of his pallid skin before he finally let go. There was nothing she could have done, and he had died, not because of her, but despite her. This didn't matter now. The villagers didn't want justice. They wanted a scapegoat for their misfortune. Today, she knew she would see neighbours turn on her, friends not meet her eye, and she knew more stories would follow, with the hopes of her sins being carried away like smoke. A door creaked at the top of the stairs, and Jenny came to her senses. She wasn't sure how long she had slept, but the chanting of prayers above her was now a slow and steady rumble. Something which usually kept her hopeful was now bathing her in dread. "Get up!" A voice boomed down from the darkness. She didn't know from whose lips it came. Jenny got to her feet. "They're ready," the voice cried. Was she ready for this? Fear liked company, and nothing brought people together like a burning. Short and sweet.
That was good. You really got me there.
I wanted to kind of think about what it would be like to be in that position. Not only like we spoke about before, like the conditions of like how some of these people were kept, which already was bad enough, but like knowing there's a possibility you're going to be executed, and knowing that there's no point in, like losing hope and not even like knowing that, even though you know the truth, there's like nothing that can help you in any way. Like,
yeah, there's nothing that matters.
You've known for years are just going to turn on you to like shift the blame away. So yeah.
I'm going to delve into the history of the Scottish witch trials. I tried to get most of the dates correct. Some of them might be a year too soon or a year too late. I do have a lot of resources that I use that will be in the description down below if you want to read into it a bit more yourself. But let me jump into the history of the Scottish witch trials. Often when we hear witch hunt, many of us most likely think of the Salem witch trials that occurred in Massachusetts between February 1692 and May 1693, where more than 200 people were accused of being witches. But more than 100 years earlier, in the 1560s, authorities in Scotland began to seek out and accuse people, mainly women, of being devil-worshipping witches. These witch trials were some of the most brutal and unjustified acts in history and were not spoken of for a very long time. In 1560, Scotland broke away from the Catholic Church and became a Protestant country. The people were bitterly divided between those loyal to the old ways of the Catholic Church and those who wanted reform. During that time, the Church was very interested in the religious and life choices of its people, and found that there were still many people openly practicing folk magic, and many others who sought out the help of cunning people. What is your understanding of a cunning person, Laura?
I just think about the word cunning. So like for me, it's somebody who has the ability to just know things, who has like not like a gossiping like side to them, but somebody who is cunning, like they can find their way around doing things in a different way.
So a cunning person, man or woman, but predominantly women, is someone who uses natural herbs and remedies to help with ailments, because most people couldn't afford to seek out a physician if they fell ill. But these cunning folk wore many hats and were sought out by people for different things, sometimes even to help with disputes between couples or neighbors. There was a fine line between being a cunning person and being a witch. Often the only difference would be depending on your standing with your community. Upset anyone, and they might report you as being a witch and consorting with the devil. The church was afraid that if the people continued their unholy acts, that God would punish Scotland. This is how the Witchcraft Act was established, and witchcraft became a crime punishable by death, usually burning. But the Witch Act did not describe what exactly a witch was, and this led people to speculate and accuse others of being witches, with most people accusing their neighbors anytime that they would have quarrels. If you were accused, you would be interrogated and tortured until you had no choice but to confess. And this meant that you would be sentenced to death by burning. In 1588, King James VI of Scotland was looking for a wife. But he couldn't just marry anyone. He needed to make the best choice. Not only would his wife become Queen Consort of Scotland, but were anything to happen to Queen Elizabeth I, James was in line to become the King of England as well. James is said to have been praying over this dilemma for weeks, until finally deciding on the 14-year-old Princess Anne of Denmark. I know, the 14-year-old girl. She must have been the perfect choice, and it probably had nothing to do with her substantial dowry. They married on the 20th of August, 1589, by proxy. Soon Anne said farewell to her family and set sail in a fleet of ships led by Admiral Peter Monk. Some say Peter, some say Peter, with a D, to her new home in Scotland. Whilst travelling, the ship experienced intense winds and oceans. Some ships were damaged and they were forced to dock in Norway. On the 25th of October, James sailed for Norway himself to go and collect his new wife. On his way to Norway, he too experienced harsh weather, but finally reached Oslo. Upon meeting, they are said to have gotten along very well. I don't know how much a 22-year-old would be getting along with a 14-year-old, but different times,
Yeah.
I guess. They spent the whole day talking and getting to know each other. They ended up deciding to get married in Norway at the old bishop's palace, and were having such a good time that they ended up traveling Norway and Denmark for the next 5 months. And after their honeymoon, essentially, they returned to Scotland and started all the celebrations over again. Why am I telling you all of this? And what does this have to do with witches? Well, Admiral Peter Monk, who was responsible for bringing Anne to Scotland, insisted that Christopher Falkendorf was responsible and that he had not sufficiently equipped the royal ships, causing them to be unable to withstand the weather. Christopher, in return, defended himself and claimed that the storms were of supernatural forces called upon by witches in the house of Karen the Weaver. So apparently during this time, Norway, they were dealing with a lot of their own witch trials, and there was quite the uproar going on. So you can imagine that King James saw a lot of this and heard a lot of people talking about this, and it's said to really have influenced him. Anna Coldings was imprisoned in You might have to help me with pronunciation. Yes, Copenhagen in Denmark. She was considered a very powerful witch and was also known as the mother of the devil. Under torture, she admitted that she and other witches had gathered in the house of Karen and had sent little devils in barrels on the ship, and once out at sea, they conjured up the storms that plagued the royal fleets. Anna was sentenced to burn along with 12 other women, including Karen the Weaver, or Karen Weaver, who admitted to being at the gathering. This was known as the Copenhagen, did I say that right? Witch trials, and truly deserves its own story, but we are going to be focusing on Scotland in this story. Back in Scotland, James VI heard the news from Denmark and decided to make sure that his land wasn't plagued by witches and started his own hunt. In the town of North Berwick, just east of Edinburgh, in 1589, a young servant by the name of Gailis Duncan was sneaking out of her master's house every other night, and word had spread that she had become quite the local healer. Her master, a deputy bailiff named David Seaton, was very curious to know what she was up to. Now, in my opinion, this was a very creepy man and was basically stalking this young girl. And in my opinion, I think that he might have been jealous. Yeah. He ended up accusing her of participating in witchcraft, on account of her helping heal people when they became sick. Gailis was wrongfully arrested by David Seaton. Gailis was wrongfully arrested, and David Seaton decided, with some help, to interrogate her by means of torture, illegally. They used many methods, including a contraption known as thumb screws that would slowly crush your fingers when tightened. They also tied a rope around her head and tightened it with a wrench, or by wrenching it. She, however, did not confess, so her torturers decided to look for a witch's mark. A witch's mark could be any kind of blemish found on the part of any part of the body. These marks included moles, skin tags, even discolorations, anything. It was believed that the witches made a deal with the devil, essentially selling their soul, and in return the devil would leave his mark by licking a part of their body. And witch hunters believed that if you were interrogating a suspected witch and you come across a mark and you find the witch's mark, that the witch was now no longer able to lie, and she was forced to admit to being a witch. They had stripped Gailis of all her clothes, shaved her head, and finally they found a mark on her neck. We're not sure what the mark was, but they claimed it was
just an average mark that anyone would find when they're bald and naked.
Exactly, just a blemish. And due to all of the torture and exhaustion, Gailis confessed to anything and everything. She was forced to name other witches, fueling the fire that would become the North Berwick witch trials. One of the names she mentioned was Agnes Sampson, a well-known local folk healer and midwife. Agnes was a respected member of the community, whom people would often visit for herbal remedies mixed with prayers. Agnes was a religious woman. She would use the ways of the old folk, traditional healing methods, medicines, but then she would pray over it to give it strength in God's name. Agnes was arrested and at first denied all of the accusations, but after intense torture, she admitted that she and over 200 other witches had gathered on Samhain, now known as Halloween. They drank, sang, and danced with the devil himself. They also plotted against King James and his new wife, causing the storms that affected the royal fleets. Weirdly, with many of these interrogations, the women were forced to admit to committing devious sexual acts with the devil, and they often said that upon making a deal with the devil, that they kissed his buttocks as a show of allegiance. Very weird. They made a lot of things very sexual.
Yeah.
Like the moment you are being interrogated, they start asking you, well, how did it feel having sex with the devil? Like, what did he look like? Like, all these men asking these, sometimes young women, these horrible questions. But I digress. King James himself was so enthralled with the witches that he is said to have interviewed Agnes himself, which must have been terrifying, but also awe-striking, to have a king standing in front of you and talking to you, asking you questions. King James, however, was skeptical while hearing her confession. It was a very magical thing that she was saying. It was almost very unbelievable, even to him. Until she called him closer and whispered something in his ear. She spoke the exact words that he had said to Anne on their wedding night, and also what she had said in return. He was convinced, and on January 28th, 1591, Agnes Sampson was taken to the scaffold in Castle Hill, where she was choked and then burnt at the stake. The North Berwick trials lasted for 2 more years and set the stage for 4 additional witch panics in Scotland in the 17th century, leading to the execution of thousands of people across Scotland. King James had found a new obsession, and being a well-literate man, is that right? Yeah. And being a well-literate man, he wrote and published a book on demonology in 1597. And in 1603, after the death of Queen Elizabeth I, he became King James I of England and took his witch hunting to England. Say that again. King James had found a new obsession, and being a well-literate man, he wrote and published a book on demonology in 1597. And in 1603, after the death of Queen Elizabeth I, he became King James I and took his witch hunting to England. These were just some of the stories. Most of the names of these women and men have been lost to time, with many historians still researching historical documents to find out more. In 2020, the Witches of Scotland campaign was established, seeking justice for the nearly 4,000 individuals, predominantly women, who were accused of witchcraft in Scotland between 1563 and 1736. Claire Mitchell, Casey, and writer Zoe Venditosi, sorry, I'm not sure of the pronunciation, but they started the campaign and also have a podcast that you can listen to over on Spotify called Witches of Scotland. I'll link their details in the description down below if you want to go give them a listen. And to end on a happy note, or a happier note, a lighter note, in 2025, the Witches of Scotland Charter was officially registered and serves as a living memorial, with its design elements symbolizing various aspects of the witch trials and the campaign goals.
It's a really nice end to a pretty horrific period in history, definitely. And it's, like trying to like tie it to modern day. There's always people who are going to be like ostracized from like society, and people who are going to be blamed for other people's misfortunes. But it's crazy how things have changed, like how brutal it was back then. You'd had nothing to protect you. Nobody was going to come to your aid, like to try and prove your innocence at all.
Yeah, in today's day and age, at least in more Western countries, there are witches, and people are openly practicing witchcraft.
Yeah.
And I think the big stigma of witches being evil and them like praying to Satan. There are very few witches that are Satanists. Sure, you can be, but very few of them. Most of them are practicing folk magic, where they just practice the old ways. They basically will go into herbology, and just do it as their own personal practice. Which is what these women did. They were just doing their own thing.
Trying to do their job, basically.
Just helping out the community.
Yeah.
And then make one mistake and someone turns on you, or because you could be a cunning woman.
Do you think that was the thing? Like people were, I don't want to like try and think about it from this point of view, but like I guess you have to. People were venturing into science and medicine, and most of the time back in the day that was men. Do you think people were jealous of the authority and like the care women had over other people?
So a big thing was these women, mostly women, they were healers. A lot of them were midwives and healers, and people could not afford to go to see doctors. So they would visit these women for, like, if someone had a fever, you would, instead of having to pay all this money to go and see a doctor for medication, you would go to a cunning witch or a cunning woman that was a healer, and they would give you herbs, and that would help break the fever. Even if you had the flu, they would give you herbs and things to help you with that.
So they're obviously trusted by a lot of people.
Yeah, but also it was most likely quite upsetting to those that wanted the money.
Yeah.
The scientific, the doctors, all that, because they were technically stealing business from this.
Yeah. Takes a whole new meaning to it if people say, oh, it's just an old wives' tale.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, well, it's an old wives' tale that could possibly help you back in the day when there's like, outbreaks of diseases, and just trying to like help in whatever way they can, rather than,
But also, most things that were regarded as magic was later on found to be science.
Yeah, exactly.
They were
anything you couldn't prove.
They were little chemists, just making their concoctions in their pots, helping out the people.
Yeah.
I do have a little extra piece of history, way more recent than the others. So the last witch to be tried in Scotland was Helen Duncan. She was known as a clairvoyant or a medium, and she held seances with her husband. So she was a clairvoyant, and her husband, instead of like shunning her, decided to turn it into a business. So they would have seances, and she would speak to loved ones that had passed. So very much, we all know someone that's gone and seen a clairvoyant person. but she was doing quite well. And she was under investigation because it wasn't fully legal to do something like that. So she was already under investigation, but in 1941, she claimed to have had contact with the spirit of a sailor who had died in the sinking of the HMS Barham. This was very alarming to the authorities because the sinking of this ship was not public information. She was arrested in 1944 because they were scared that she was going to reveal secrets regarding the Normandy landing. But how could they legally hold her? Well, they discovered that they could charge her under the still active Witchcraft Act of 1735. Thus, she was tried and found guilty of being a witch and sentenced to 9 months in London's Holloway prison. The public was outraged, and the act was later repealed and replaced by the Fraudulent Medium Act. But this act too was later years repealed.
Yeah.
So
basically anybody who's doing well in any way, who has like some slight business on the side.
Well, I don't think it was really mainly that. I think they were scared that she was legit.
Yeah.
That she had information and that she could bring out some other information about the Normandy landing, which would threaten the government. So rather than thinking that she couldn't be, clairvoyant, they were like, no, she knows something. Yeah. We don't know how, but she knows. We need to shut her up.
Yeah.
So they locked her up, and they needed a way to do that. And she was technically doing spiritual things. So they were like, well, I guess we could call her a witch. But yeah, no, I think the public was very angry that this is 1944. It's not, it's long ago, but it's not the 1560s. Yeah. So I think people were very upset. How dare you claim someone to be a witch?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's crazy. But yeah, I think they found a loop around.
Very difficult part of history. Obviously, we know a lot of things happen all over the world, but it's interesting for me. It's so close to home.
It is close to home for you. You've been to Scotland, haven't you? Yeah, you've been to Scotland. It's on my bucket list.
Yeah,
I've always wanted to go to Scotland. If you'd lived in Scotland during the witch trials, do you think you would have been accused of being a witch?
Probably. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I would like to see myself as somebody who, like a healer or someone who could help. But it's.
But did you know that some women were accused of being witches because they were mouthy?
Yeah.
They were just too confident. They were just too, self-assured. That, no offense, but the men went, she must be a witch.
She must be.
She must be in line with the devil for her to talk back to me.
Yeah.
So I think both of us probably would have been witches. Me, definitely. What do you think it would have felt like to be accused?
I just think, that feeling of helplessness. I think I'm very much a realist, so I know if I was in that situation.
Oh, you'd be like,
I know,
I'm dead.
Fucked, basically.
Yeah, no, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Because there were definitely people that were accused that did not end up, being tried, or at least found guilty. A lot of people did get away from it, but it was very difficult.
Yeah.
Because you've got, it's like a he said, she said thing, whereas whatever she says doesn't really matter.
No. And your life's never going to be the same, is it? Like, think about a small village. Everybody's
Yes.
going to treat you differently, which is automatically going to make you be an outsider and look strange to them.
Definitely. There was, I can't remember where I read this or whether this was in England or in Scotland, but somewhere in my research, I remember a woman had been accused by her neighbors, and she was being tried, and she confessed. And someone, I think maybe like a pastor or someone, was speaking to her and asked her, "Are you truly a witch?" And she said, "No, but I would rather be burnt and just have my life end here, because I know it was my neighbors who accused me. So if I end up getting out of here, I'm going to have to leave, because my life is over
It's
here.
not going to be the same again."
So she pleaded guilty because she knew she was going to die, because she already knew her life was over just from being accused.
Very sad.
Do you think that these women actually believed that they were witches, or do you think that they were just victims of fear?
I think they were victims of fear, definitely. I think a lot of issues come into play with it. If somebody genuinely believes they are a witch, I think, there's kind of like, there's dark magic, but then there's like, looking at somebody's body to try and find a blemish to prove they're a witch, and then torture comes alongside that, and then automatically people are going to confess to whatever crime that they've been accused of. So I don't believe that I don't believe they thought they were witches, but it was just
I think I agree, because some people identified as cunning women, so they would, maybe not entirely openly, but they would tell people that they were a cunning person, aka saying that they were able to heal, they were able to like help them.
Yeah.
But I don't think the idea of a witch back then was very much that you were in league with the devil.
Yeah.
So whether you were a cunning woman or not, you probably wouldn't call yourself a witch, because you didn't make a deal with the devil, which is, I think, what they really put witch under back then. I could be mistaken. This is just kind of what I think.
Yeah.
Please don't come for us.
I think as well, like, religion, it was such a massive part of society then. Number one, if you suspected someone of witchcraft, or if you believed you were different in any way, not just healers, but like if you had a difference, I feel like some people, not all, but a lot of people were such religious fanatics, you would want to be like cleansed.
Yes.
And helped in some way.
Well, I might get the dates a little wrong here, but I believe in the Witchcraft Act of 1735 it was a rewritten act saying that it was illegal to accuse someone of being a witch. So later, and they thought that would really stop people from blaming just random neighbors. But that in return had its own bad effects that came from it, because in that act it also made it illegal to claim to be one.
Right, okay.
So you couldn't claim to be like a cunning person.
Okay.
And lastly, do you think the idea of a witch today, like in pop culture or spirituality, is reclaiming something that was once feared? Or does it still carry the weight of those past horrors?
I think now it's difficult to say without sounding like rude about it, but like, I guess like the witchy kind of thing has become a lot more trendy than it was.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And like, I don't think it's if you really believe in witches and you believe in like dark magic, I don't believe it's like an accurate representation of what being a witch is. It's like, I think people are trying to reclaim it in a way where it's like, it's okay to be different.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to be like a woman essentially. And, but like, I don't think the representation is like how people, not that it was true at all, but like how people saw witches back then.
Yeah.
It's very much like a trendy kind of, it's okay to be different kind of thing.
Right. Right.
But obviously there are still witches all around the world who sometimes do practice dark magic. But it's
it's definitely, well, there's definitely so if you do practice witchcraft, especially if you look into Wicca, I think Wiccans really talk about light magic and dark magic, but there really is like, it's in my opinion, it's really grey. Like, so witchcraft is a personal practice, and you can practice it for yourself and for those around you. That doesn't mean that you are essentially like practicing dark magic or black magic. In any case, it could lean a bit darker.
Yeah.
But mostly people are just using it for their daily rituals, their daily life, helping you out with a job.
Yeah.
Job.
It's not necessarily seen as an evil thing.
No. I think witches definitely do obviously still exist, and people still practice witchcraft. And I do think that they did take back the word witch, because people will go as a witch now. They would publicly state that they are witches.
Yeah.
So taking that back and being like, well, I am a witch, and no, I don't, haven't made a deal with Satan, and I'm not in league with the devil. So I think, people have taken it back.
Like proving like what they are, rather than just like having a label put on and just saying like, this is what I do, not what you think.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there we go.
I enjoyed that a lot. It's really interesting, and it's, like I said, it's very, very, very close to home when you think about Scotland. Definitely, it's I'm
just happy they got some justice.
Yeah,
with the new charter.
Yeah, definitely.
I am very happy for them, for just bringing everything to light, and really,
really nice. Like the government in Scotland, there was like a huge public apology for
that. Was
people.
Well, that was part of the deal. Essentially, that was one of the things that they wanted.
Yeah,
they really wanted a public apology for the injustice of the burning of so many people, so many women.
Yeah, and
I think having the charter as like a living memorial is really, really great. Because there's a big witch community in Scotland.
Yeah, I can imagine so.
That is it for this episode of the Story Seekers. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the dark and haunting history of the Scottish witch trials.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. It really helps us to keep exploring these eerie and fascinating stories.
And let us know, do you think fear and superstition were the biggest driving forces behind the witch trials? Or was there something more calculated at play? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. That was a good one.
Yeah, really good.
That was a chatty one.